All right, so for you signing on, what was the most important aspect for you to capture in this story to make it different from the original, but also honor it?
Yeah, it's funny. You want to do what people are hoping for, but give them something unexpected. It's kind of ironic they're standing next to the Delorean here, because I feel like this is what Back to the Future did. Like, I made a list of all my favorite sequels, and the ones that I like the most are the ones that were trying something new. They weren't just full on just repeating what the last film did. They were trying something, kind of original. So I'm like, oh, I think that's what I'm going to try to do with this film is try to have an original mindset versus like a sequel where I'm just repeating. And it was great for Riley, going and becoming a teenager because it's all about change. And so inherently, it kind of built in that kind of like newness to it.
Well, in the first challenge, it sounds like you have more characters in this one than the original. So each one has to have their own story arc. What were the challenges of developing that, but also making sure they all interconnect well?
It's a lot of work. Dave Holstein, one of our writers, is here today, and he would tell you that's incredibly difficult because it's such a large cast, and it keeps getting bigger. I kept thinking I was doing it's a lot like the Toy Story, universe where you want to add more toys. It's the same thing with emotions. You want to see more emotions, but then you're starting to get more characters, and you have a lot more work to try to make sure that everyone's storyline is feeding into the main one, but they're also having their own little storyline on top of it. Yeah, it's complicated. We had 9 new emotions show up in our first screening. It was way too many. I overwhelmed the audience. It was too much.
Well, that's interesting. So then, so for you, what was the challenge? Because one thing I love about Pixar is they never pull punches with kids. Like they tell honest stories.
Yeah.
But for you, how did you want to balance not taking it too dark, but also not softening it too much?
Yeah, you know what? Tone. It's one of the things I initially thought about. I'm like, I want to make a movie that's fun to watch, but also has something really meaningful behind it. Sometimes there's been a lot of movies that you've seen where you're like, that was really good. And then someone will ask you, do you want to see it again? And you're like, no, I don't. And I'm like, my favorite movies are the ones that you love to watch over and over and over again. So I wanted to strike a tone that wasn't too dark. I wanted to get into a little more serious subjects, but not so much that you didn't want to watch it again. And we did some screenings where it was too dark. And I'm like, I don't want to watch this movie again.
I love the music to this one, with Andrea's work.
Yeah.
And each emotion has its own song. What were your feelings on what the music added to your story?
Oh my goodness. It's, for a movie about emotions, it's, the score is what brought the emotion.
Right.
And I really felt it when I was there on the scoring stage, listening to all the work that Andrea had done. Yeah. Beautiful work, and I couldn't believe how much the movie jumped emotionally just in that phase. You recorded over the course of really a couple weeks, and the leap that it took was gigantic.
Inside Out 2.
Heard of it?
Yeah. It was like the first one was a small indie film. If I recall, no one saw it.
Sure,
so
it was a minor
blip on the radar. No, awesome movie. All right, so for you, taking the character, you're aging the character obviously a bit. What was the biggest challenge? Adding more emotions to it, but without drowning the character in the movie.
I mean, you said it. I mean, there's, you only have so much real estate in the film, and it is Joy's movie. At the end of the day, she's the main character, and so you have to carve out first a tranche for her, and then Riley, and then sadness, anger, all your favorites from the first movie, disgust and fear, and then it's like, well, wait. As she's growing, there's a natural instinct to grow the movie and to find more space. So there were a lot of characters who were added and then cut. There were characters who stayed because they just had the perfect amount of real estate to impact ratio, like Nostalgia, who has just a great entrance and a great exit. But it's not easy, I'll tell you that, because you do have to give everybody their own arc. You have to give, Iowa Dabiri, you have to give her character a 3-act play to deal with, and so it's not.
So then it was a twofold process. A, each character have his own story arc,
yeah.
And then B, they all have to interconnect.
Yeah, everything in this world has to intersect, which is I think the hardest part of writing into the Inside Out films is that it's this 3-dimensional chess game you're playing where what's happening with Riley, what's happening with joy, what's happening with anxiety, all those stories have to move at a pace where they are affecting each other and climaxing at the same time. And so that is a very, you have to make it look easy, and it's probably the hardest part of the whole thing.
One thing I love about Pixar and Inside Out specifically is you guys don't shy away from doing real drama. Like you we're kids, but for you, what was the balancing act for that? How far you want to push it, and it drowns out the comedy, but also you don't want to soften it.
No, it's a great balance. I mean, I think earlier versions of the film dealt with shame, which felt like it was pulling us a little too far into a dramatic space. And anxiety felt like a great way to be able to embody a feeling that could be both humorous and break your heart. So we landed there. But yeah, no, it's a tug of war between happy and sad, as is the case in Inside Out, as per usual.
Yeah. I actually, and for you as a screenwriter, how did you feel when you watched the movie, but you're seeing all the great music for this one, and each character having his own music? What was your feeling on her wonderful music work?
I mean, my background is musical theater.
Yeah.
I love what Andrea did in this film. I mean, she really just killed it. It's such a beautiful orchestral complement to the original theme, which was written by her husband. So it's just a wonderful story. I love the music in this movie.